Corner, episode 5. Powered by Beast Coast. Shout out to them. Today I have a very special guest. I have like the one and the only RetroRGB. You guys might have seen him somewhere on many different retro videos. Like pretty much every retro corner of the internet. Cites this guy for like all of his hard work and research. Man, how you doing?
Thanks, man. It's nice you. I'm happy to be here. You're one of my favorite freaking people in the scene. I absolutely love hanging out with you and doing all the crazy stuff. And you're also one of the few people that understands the uphill battle of trying to explain to people what lag is. Because
Oh my god!
I imagine this is similar to what like people a couple hundred years ago thought when they're trying to tell everybody the Earth is round, and everybody's like, "You're a heathen, burn him at the stake," and it's like. No, lag really does matter a lot,
Yeah, bro,
especially in competitions.
bro. I wanna pull my fucking hair out sometimes, man, because it's like, I feel like so obviously the FGC, it has like a long history of arcade roots, and then it switched over to console, right? So with console, they've never had to tweak or configure everything, right? So it's like I feel like I'm dragging and kicking and screaming like a lot of these kids into the modern age, and it's absolutely making me pull my hair out because a lot of the times when I post facts, even when I post a chart, they'll be like, "Oh, did you check the input latency of this?" And I'm like, "Did you read the chart?" I'm like, "Bro, like, come on, I can only lead you
Yeah,
so far. Click the link."
yeah, absolutely, absolutely. And it's, a lot of people just I don't understand, but they don't want to. I think it's like they take it personally. Like, oh, I'm good at a game, and you're telling me there's a lot of lag in it. So are you saying I'm not good at this game or something? And that's not what we're trying to do at all. Not even a little bit. We're just trying to say, like, hey, even if you love the way this is, it could actually be better. And sometimes for free. Sometimes it's things like changing your TV settings or just paying attention to which scaler you want to buy. It's about the same price. It's kind of interesting.
Yeah, like a lot of the stuff that we talk about is actually just straight up like free 99. It's just about optimizing what you already have. But actually, what I realize is that a lot of these players that are pro, they're used to playing in the underwater delay, so they're actually like very accustomed to it. When we do the latency fixes that we've been suggesting, across all of us, like it actually changes the metagame of like a lot of these competitive games. Like 4.5 frames on PS4, and going to like 1 or 2 is actually a huge competitive difference. That really matters.
Yeah.
Mhm,
So, one thing that I've never tested,
mhm.
I mean, I have, but not at the extent of the way you have and other stuff, is people dropping latency. So, one of the things I've always tested is when you add latency, and when you're used to one way, you're like you play on a CRT, you game that way, and then you switch over to a flat panel. That is a lot of the testing that I've done, like the real world, not measurement testing.
Mhm.
And it's always interesting to see people's different perception of it because your average person don't realize there's latency right away. It
Mhm.
takes, I
Takes a
mean,
while.
unless it's insanely bad, but
Yeah.
it takes a little while, maybe one gaming session. But I've never done a lot of research on what happens when you take somebody that based their entire practice in their entire game around a setup with 5 or 6 frames total latency,
Mhm.
and that's not added latency. That's from the time you push the button to the
Oh
time the
yeah.
console processes it through the TV, etc. So you've had a lot more experience with that, where you've handed pro players your rig and said play on it, and it freaks all of them out, I think.
Yeah. They all get freaked the fuck out. So at Combo Breaker, so at first, like I want to say like you definitely pushed me to start researching this because you were the one that sold me my lovely Zworks 480 hertz monitor, which I'm looking at now. shout
Yeah,
shout
that's
shout shouts to
awesome.
Zworks for that. And like like I'll be honest. So at first, like I was a fucking fraud. So I had the monitor, but like I didn't tune it. I was playing it in 60 hertz. I'm sorry.
Mhm.
I was playing it in 60 hertz. I'm sorry. Then like a month later, or I think like 2 months later, I started to realize I was like, wait, like maybe I should start tuning this, right? Then like I started playing in 4K 120 hertz, right? And I'm like, damn, like this is fucking good, right? But then I started reading the Blur Busters blog, on the actual monitor, and obviously like I saw your video on it, right? But yours was geared towards retro and not so
Right.
much like about tuning the features of the monitor. And I read the Blurbuster's article, and I was like, wait, you can tune this to 480 hertz? I was like, bro, like let me try every freaking setting right now. Let me try 1080p 240. Wow, amazing. 720p 360. I'm like, oh my god, like how low can this go? And then I tried 540p 480 hertz, and I was like mind blown. I was like, bro, this changes the game. Oh my god, like do I have like the lowest latency setup right now? Oh wait, it's just my monitor. Let me try to tune my PC, right? So I started researching its controller overclocking, and I was like, bro, this is incredible. I was like, wait, it's not that I'm too old. the game's like the game's like twice as much. Yeah, go on, Bob.
That's hysterical.
Yeah.
You mentioned a whole bunch of things that are all hilarious. First, when I first contacted Zeus, he told me this is not a retro gaming monitor. It's meant for PCs. And I was like, yeah. Integer scaling. I'm going to use it for retro. And it didn't really work for retro. And he told me at the end, he's like, I told you this was for PCs. And I didn't even realize, and I felt very stupid afterwards, but I didn't even realize to get the full bandwidth, you actually needed 2 DisplayPort connections plugged into your video card, not just one.
Oh yeah, well,
and the
well
moment.
oh yeah, well, actually, to get the 540p mode, 480 hertz, you can actually use one. But yeah, carry on, brother.
For the 4K and 1080p stuff, yeah,
sure.
And once I did that, I was just like, oh, I know who's gonna want this monitor. That's when I contacted you. Like, you need to try this thing. This is way different. And yeah, that was totally geared towards PC, and I think it was absolutely awesome. But the other thing is, when you start adding all of this stuff up, a lot of people think I'm crazy because I'm like, oh, well, if you just tweak it this way, it'll drop from 6 milliseconds of lag to 3.5. And it's like, do you really ever notice 2.5 milliseconds of lag? No, I never do. But you add that with the display, with tweaking your video card, and then suddenly, before you even realize it, you're talking more than half a frame of latency just in settings. And that pro gamers absolutely, no doubt, would be able to tell obviously for the games that we're talking about. Pro RPG gamers, there's no input latency worries if you're playing Final Fantasy, really. But for fighting games and for anything where reaction time and moves are a big deal, then yeah, absolutely, all that stuff really adds up.
Yeah, like, and I do want to mention, just because it's not geared towards retro specifically, so I guess when you say that, it's obviously real hardware on retro. So I did find a way to make it work for retro. So when I use FightK2 a lot, right, and I do the controller overclocks, right, and I play in 480 hertz and use Run Ahead 1, I've found that the input delay timing is very close to real hardware. Obviously, it's an emulator and it's still frame drops, so the frame drops are still there. So it's not 100%, but the timing is there, which actually blew my mind. I was like, wow, like so you can use this for retro, like.
Yeah, you're 100% right. When I said retro, I meant real consoles into like the OSSC, because when I had it, the RetroTink 5X wasn't even out yet, and I'd be willing to bet that it would work with original consoles at the very least in triple buffer mode. So, and you're talking variable 0 to 1 frame of lag, but with a 0 lag integer scaled 4K monitor like the Z-Works, that's not really going to feel like anything at all.
Oh yeah, for sure. And to answer your original question, like so when I brought it to our pro players, right, they were all so a lot of the pro players I brought it to, like at first they play on it for 30 minutes. They were like, wow, like it's too fast. I have to readjust my timing. Then like 1 hour later, they were like, holy shit, this is absolutely amazing. To the point where, so the actual Capcom Cup champion of 2019, before the pandemic happened, he played on my setup for a few days, and then afterwards he made a tweet saying, if you have never played on NYC Furby setup, you have never played a fighting game before, which is hell yeah, that's the best recommendation like I could possibly get. So then immediately, like I was like, fuck it, I can't talk about it. Like me typing it in words, like you're not gonna understand. You need to actually feel it. So what I did, I took it upon myself to bring it to a Combo Breaker, right, which is one of the largest fighting game tournaments, period. Shout outs to Rick and the Hado. And basically, like I was streaming there, and I set up the I didn't bring the Z-Works because I was on a laptop, so I brought my 390 hertz Acer monitor, right. That one has 0.5 ms GTG. The Z-Works has 480 hertz 1 ms GTG. So you still see some blurring on the Z-Works, but the input latency, I mean, the perceived lag from the monitor is still slightly better. It runs slightly faster than the 390 hertz 0.5 ms, but it's pretty close. It's like 95% there, right? So when I brought that second setup, I just grabbed every pro player I could. I grabbed every commentator and then made them come back to the setup. And I did three things. I first played Street Fighter 5 in 60 hertz, right, with all my overclocks and tuned. So with the settings I was using, I was achieving 1 frame of input delay in Street Fighter 5, right? The game on PS4, it runs at about 4.5 frames of lag. You know, obviously 60 hertz monitor adds close to a frame. So let's say 5 point something, right? So when you drop from 5 frames to 1, immediately everybody was like, "Holy shit!" Instant response, instant freaking response, and then they were all mind blown. So I did 3 tests. So first, had them play Street Fighter 60 hertz. They were blown away already, and then I was like, "There's another level." So I had them play Ultimate Marvel vs. Capcom 3, which has a 120 hertz and 120 FPS mod built into the game, right? So obviously the lag drops even further, but obviously with 120 FPS, it's easier to see the latency reductions because you can see the improved animation on screen. Then they were blown away even further. They were like, "Oh my God, holy crap." Then I took them to the final level. I had them try 390 FPS, 390 hertz Tekken, and they were like, "Oh my God, there's another level. This is incredible." Like, where have I been all my life? What have I been doing? And then they went back outside to the PS4 stations, and they were like, "Real life just looks weird." I love it. I love it. And I was like,
so that's something else I've been curious about too. Just a few weeks ago, I did a video on some scaler thing that, you know, it's good for us who just want sharp scaling to 4K. It's, you know, it adds a weird effect. But one of the things that I was doing is I wanted to make sure it wasn't dropping frames. So I aimed my 4K 60 camera at my monitor, which is a decent base model BenQ. For the price, it's amazing, but compared to other monitors, it's crap. But I wanted to make sure it wasn't dropping frames, so I had the 240p test suites counter going. And when I played it back, you could always see 3 total frames. So the main number, whatever's on the screen, is bright. So if it's on, you know, frame number 4, you see the 4 very bright. But you could also see the 3 and the 2. Because there's so much image retention that it doesn't black out between frames. You're still seeing what's there. So the ghosting, the refresh rate, gray to gray, you know, all of those things combined, where you really wouldn't get that on a CRT. You might get some blurring on the camera just because, you know, the camera's not going to start at the exact moment that the number changes. Yeah. But that's not something at all that you would see. And what I've found, and you remember, I'm not remotely close to a pro gamer, but what I've certainly found is that if you have a really nice panel, like one of those newer LG OLEDs with black frame insertion, that's like 18 milliseconds of lag total. But I feel less latency on that than I do on a very fast, cheap LCD panel with lots of ghosting and blurring, because everything feels like it's updating faster. Is that something that plays? Now, obviously, that would play into a factor if you're going from 60 to 120 hertz native gaming. So that, you know, but what do you think about that for just if you're stuck at 60?
I have to do more testing on a BFI. So like I've tested it casually, but like I haven't sat down and done hardcore testing. But like, you know, from what I've felt so far, it's like my findings actually agree with yours. You know, but obviously I need to do some more tests to verify it. But basically, like it goes in line with what I was saying. It's like the latency of these panels is basically on par with CRT, but the look is not there yet. And like and like BFI, you know, helps mitigate that gap. It's getting very close. It's getting close. It's getting close to the point where like I'm considering finally being able to move on from CRT. Not yet. You know, like obviously we're still CRT diehards over here, but it's getting there. It's getting there.
Yeah, you know, I think that we're quickly approaching a time where if you really are hardcore about CRTs, it's going to be exactly like classic cars, and that you can't just go and buy a 69 Camaro, hop in it, and drive it to the store. Somebody would have had to have restored it. You might have to restore it. And of course, just like anything else in life, the absolute, the person who works on it and, you know, the quality of the work make all the difference. So it's getting to the point where not everybody's going to want to spend, a full week of their time total disassembling, discharging, recapping, calibrating a CRT. They're going to want to just plug something in and go. Not to mention how heavy they are and all of the other things about them. So, as much as I'm a CRT enthusiast and always will be, I am hardcore gunning for any solution that could be a pro replacement for it, whether you're a pro gamer or whether you're just really into watching movies and stuff like that. So it's kind of neat to see the progression of all of it, but we definitely got some ways to go.
No, oh yeah. So like I'm looking at the chat while it's going. So on Terry also asked, "What's CRT?" I'm new to this. That is a cathode ray tubes. If you see like in the back of Bob's screen, those are all CRTs right there.
Yeah. And there are two main reasons that gamers talk about this. And the first is that, and this is something I've shown in my videos, so I'm sorry for everybody from my channel who are listening to this, but if you measure the latency from the time it takes from an analog video signal to leave your video game console and start being drawn on the CRT, it is less than 1 millisecond. You could measure this with many different tools, but it is essentially instant. Whereas on most flat panels, it's far from instant. And even the ones that are, sub half a frame, you still have things like ghosting and blurring. So even though they're fast, you still have the perception of, is this really keeping up? And then, of course, then there is the blurry factor of it, where CRTs refresh in a way where each frame is unique to itself. And there's a lot of image retention going on flat panels. So there's and there's also resolution and other stuff that I don't want to nerd out too far on. But for many scenarios, gaming on a CRT might not be as sharp, but would actually be better overall, especially in a pro environment. So yeah, that's why a lot of people still want to stick with those.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. That's why CRTs are so important and are beloved to us. But like it's hard for them. It's hard for like the Zoomers in my chat to understand, just by talking about it. They have to actually see it and feel it in person, like, not via video, right? And then they actually really understand. And, it's cool that you mentioned like about the struggles that we go through to actually repairing CRTs and keeping them in maintenance and service. Thankfully, we know people like, Jose Cruz and Steve from Retro Tech who just finished repairing the CRT monitors that I told you to give to him. So it was awesome.
Sweet.
He sent me photos of his work on the M4U, and I was absolutely blown away. I was absolutely blown away. And like, we're really lucky that we know people like that, because if we didn't, how would we keep this shit running, bro? We can't.
Yeah, absolutely. We're very lucky to have a lot of good people in the scene. And it's funny, the Glow in the chat said when their CRT blew out and they got their first flat panel, they couldn't play Guitar Hero anymore. And it turned out to be the latency. And it's one of those things where it's like, yeah, absolutely. That's a perfect real world description. And depending on when that happened, the first whole generation of flat panels forgot about gamers. It was still a time in the industry where I worked at a company that designed medical grade computers. I would go to these high-end trade shows, and occasionally I would mention gaming, and people would legit laugh at me. And then fast forward to a couple of years ago, Tech and I went to I forgot which one it was, but it was a trade show at the Javits Center where they were doing broadcast tech. And I went up to one of the companies that I had known from back in the day, back in 2005, that had laughed at me when I asked. I was like, hey, I'm looking to set this up for gaming, for pro streaming. And they were like, gaming? Oh, yeah, come over here. We have a whole section. And it's like, it took a long time for people to realize how important latency was and how important gaming was as compared to everything else that people sell. So the whole first generation flat panels was almost never a game mode, ridiculously slow, and it was brutal for gamers for a long time.
Yeah, it was super brutal. Like, in fact, like a lot of the retro heads I have, they really did have a Stockholm syndrome about all this stuff. This is why when you were nice enough to bless me with the early DC HDMI, which is now DC Digital, and I brought it to Battle of the Strongest 3, the event that we raised $10,000 for. Thank you so much to you, Dan, and Chris for letting me get like an early preview at that. Like the players, they didn't want to believe me at first, even though I did the numbers. I'm also a pro player, and I tested it myself. They didn't want to believe me at first, right? So I actually. Thankfully, DC HDMI has dual output, so I was able to compromise and use VGA CRT, for the players, and then HDMI to the stream. Fast forward to today. Now they all swear on DC HDMI, DC digital. They're begging me to play on flat screen. What a difference!
Yeah.
But it took 2 years to get to that point. I had to bring it again and actually convince them over time. I was like, "Hey guys, this shit is lagless. I'm telling you, this shit is lagless. Like, please stop using CRT."
There's so much misinformation out there too. I think you remember the story where somebody got really pissed off because they were asking like, "Oh yeah, so do you use RGB in your setup?" And they're like, "What? RGB adds lag. What are you, stupid? We use composite." And everybody was like, "That's not how that works at all, even a little bit." And it's funny because I wonder where they heard that from. I wonder if they bought one of those garbage piece of shit pound cables and heard, well, that's RGB, so they must have. Did they just assume that that's an RGB problem, which is fair if if you're not a tech nerd, or was that just some know-it-all spreading misinformation because they couldn't understand the difference? I don't know, but that one cracked me up. When somebody says something that dumb, I don't even know what to say. It's like when people like flat earthers, it's just like
yeah, bro.
All right, buddy. I'll see you at the ice wall.
Yeah, bro. Like I've seen Smash players, refuse to play PVMs because they swore that RGB added lag. So, or they did play on a PVM, they'll play on composite. But now they all swear by it now. I'm talking to a lot of people and they're like, yeah, like I have a PVM 1405, I have a PVM 2005, and I was like, thank God, like we finally brought you into the modern age. Rockstar asks like a really good question. He says, "How much does a good setup like this cost? $3,000? No." That's a very common misconception. It's not like about how much you invest in the gear. It's about having like a good low latency monitor and actually tuning the equipment you already have. Like people think this costs so much, but it actually doesn't.
100% agree. And this, I was kind of ruined having that job that I talked about because I got to go to CES every year. I got to know some of the people that made the panels themselves, and I would walk into a Best Buy after that for like 10 years. Like I couldn't even really go to a Best Buy because I'd walk around and be like, junk, junk, junk. That guy's a crackhead, junk, junk. And like, there's really only like 4 awesome panels, and they weren't almost ever the most expensive ones. It's changed now. There's a lot of good ones, but that theory is still true in that it's not so much money. It's just knowing which ones to pick for whatever you're doing. So I purposely always show this piece of crap $250 42-inch LG that I bought like 4 years ago. I always show that in my videos. And yeah, there's ghosting and blurring and image retention, but there's 4 milliseconds of lag, and it was super cheap. And that's only a 60 hertz TV. And that's, if you wanted a bigger one, it's not about money. It's just knowing exactly the right ones to get and when to get it. And I think, you could probably pick up a 120 hertz, decent quality monitor for what, like $300-$400 now?
No, like actually, I've seen the 144 hertz monitors be as low as sub 200 on Amazon. So like, so
for 1080p, actually, you're saying though, right?
Yeah. For 1080p. Yeah. Also, I should probably tell the chat that, guys, even to this day, there is no perfect monitor. Every monitor has some type of drawback, and it depends entirely on your use case, right? It depends on what you're trying to do. So it's very important. That's why people ask me, they're like, "What monitor should I get?" I can't actually tell them like exactly which monitor to get because I don't know their use case. Like for example, let's say somebody like reads like all of our guides, right? And they're saying like, hey, like I want to buy a 144 hertz monitor. What should I buy? And then if I suggest them like a 144 hertz monitor, for example, some of these 144 hertz monitors have bad 60 hertz scores, and like they'll be wanting to play like on PS4 or something like that. So it actually wouldn't help them in that case, right? So like they actually have to research and find the exact monitor for their use case.
Yeah, you totally nailed it. PC gamer, it's hardest if you're mixing PC and consoles, because then you run into the exact scenario that you'd have to find a monitor that's not so laggy at 60 hertz, but could still handle larger ones. So.
Yeah, like also like another problem with this is that there's no high refresh lag tester publicly available yet. Like I was lucky enough to have one because you lent me the Guilt, which allowed me to do like a lot of the testing. But people can't buy this stuff publicly. However, like thanks to people like Dan and Leo Bodnar, Time Sleuth, we can test 60 hertz scores pretty reliably. So that's a good starting point, at least.
Yeah, wasn't Blurbusters teasing a 120 hertz tester that they were working on?
Like they did test it. Like he told me a price point, and I'm waiting for it to be in pre-production so I can buy one. Like basically like it's supposed to do all of that and more. Like he teased some details on it.
That's very cool. I'm
Did you get on the
definitely
list for
buying
that?
it.
Did you get on the list for that? Like you should probably DM him and get on that list for that, because I think it's like, I think he's selling like 100 of them in pre-production. You should definitely get one. And if
I
not, like,
emailed and never heard back.
all right,
I never
I'll
know
set it
who I
up.
pissed off or not, to be honest with you, because sometimes like it'll come back around later that like I called Intech Gaming a bunch of frauds and somebody's buddies with Young, and then now they're mad at me. But I said Intech because somebody in the chat just said they remember 10 years ago people legit got brainwashed into believing 30 frames per second is max and your eyes can't see 60 frames a second. That's what Intech Gaming just said. When I was talking about the latency, they were like, well, your eyes can only see 45 frames per second anyway. And I tagged you in that post because I just knew you were going to be like,
Bro,
oh yeah,
like,
come over to my house.
bro, like the disinformation that we've had to, like, basically change over the last couple of years has been unreal. It's unbelievable. It's unbelievable, like, like how little people know about these things. But it's okay. Like, you don't have to know everything. That's why we're trying to basically, like, that's why everybody's trying to change the game and educate people. And it's not only people like me and you. It's people like New Dallas, like who does input lag testing. Guys like WYDD, like he does like amazing work on modern and retro. Guys like Mr. Add-ons. There's so many people that are there's so many people that are so dedicated to the cause, and like, that's definitely one of the reasons, why I fuck with the retro gaming community so much. I mean, in the case of Mr., for example, those guys are latency fiends.
Yes.
Right?
Yep.
Like that's pretty much why whenever I look up controller lag, I always make sure to look at the Mr. Add-ons latency controller chart, because that entire chart is peer reviewed and tested by hundreds, if not thousands, of retro gaming nerds all around the world. And if something is wrong, like, they will call it out.
Yeah, absolutely. It's, and just, I want to make sure I'm clear about this. If somebody's listening to this and they don't know what we're talking about, that's fine. There's nothing wrong with that. Nobody expects somebody to just wake up and be a nerd. Like, you got to learn this stuff. You got to get it. But it's different saying, are you sure about that? Or, oh, really? I never heard that. Like, that's a perfectly normal reaction.
That's fine.
But it's only when people are like, you're just lying to sell your scalers. That one always blows my mind. Do they think I'm Mike G? Do they think I'm the RetroTink guy or something? I don't sell anything. So it's like, what are you mad at?
They think you get they think you get a cut low key, like they think like some kind of backroom deal where it's like, okay, Bob, like, you talk good about my scaler, I'll give you a 15% cut, something like that.
Yeah, if I were to shill for money, if that's how I wanted to roll, I would never take the most stressful things that you could imagine to shill for. I would take the easy ones and and not have to worry about pushback. But that's not how it goes.
That's why that's why with the research. So it's important to remember when you go down this rabbit hole, you should never get cocky, and you should never assume that you know everything. And you should always have an open mind and be willing to learn things, because there is literally always more to learn. The rabbit hole never ends. That being said, when I reached close to the top of the mountain, and I realized everything that I was doing was working, I hit up all the experts. So I hit up guys like yourself. I hit up guys like New Dallas. I hit up guys like Blurbusters. I hit up guys like WYDD to double check and peer review that everything I was saying was 120% correct. And then when I did that, I started testing it in pro tournaments. Kept the info to myself for a couple of months, and see what actually happens, right? And then what happened during the pandemic? I was going on a tear for like months and months at a time, beating pro players left and right, keeping it to myself, right? And I was like, okay, like, this thing works, but it's not fair, like, I gotta actually tell people what it is, because I want to be like a fair playing field, right? So I actually published the info, to try to push things forward, and and like, it worked. Like, I feel like with the Evo announcement and the Sony and Epic announcement, like, that's the culmination of everybody's hard work over the years. It's like finally they're doing something.
Yeah, and that was something that you always did, though. Always was that you and I both were always about sharing information, and
Hmm.
we were butting up against a lot of people who were mad at us for it. There was one whole Facebook group that like wanted to shut me down because they said if Bob posts all these modding guides, how are we going to make money? Well, if you're good at your job, then all you need to do is tell your customers, hey, you could try that yourself. Do you have 300 bucks worth of equipment and know how to do this high level stuff? No? All right, come to me then. And it's the same with you. It's like you test it first to make sure that you're not spreading misinformation and getting people to spend money they don't need to. But once you know it's there, you spread the love and then, then go from there. And you've done that with OSSC timings for arcade boards to tips like this. You've never been one of those like let's try to be sneaky and hide it from people types.
No, it's not like that. But in the case of the FGC, so the reason why there was resistance is because I'll be honest and say it here, and I'll say it again loud for the people in the back, because some people like they try to think TOs are nefarious. TOs in general are running on razor thin margins, and a lot of tournaments actually lose money. Right? They actually lose money. You
Yeah.
guys need to realize this at first. Like a lot of the TOs today, they do a labor of love, like on the scene, not trying to make a profit or anything like that. So the reason why there was pushback is because a lot of the changes that I were proposing, it will require people to upgrade equipment. It will require people to upgrade their PCs, and obviously there's costs associated with that. So of course they wanted to stay on PS4. They wanted me to basically like shut the fuck up, but but in a stunning twist, we actually got the best of both worlds with Sony and Epic and Evo actually making those announcements. People have the best of both worlds. The latency is going to drop. They don't have to upgrade to 144 hertz monitor or PC. Basically, everybody wins, and it buys people time to get ready for the modern era, pretty much. So it's pretty much a win.
Yeah, absolutely. And I hope the stuff keeps pushing forward, and I hope people get what we're trying to do, because by no means are we telling tournament organizers or home people at home playing, we're not trying to say every 6 months when we discover something new to throw out your old equipment and buy new ones. But if you just happen to be in the market to buy one today, now we could show you which one to get. Or if you need a second setup, or I have so many friends that whenever they upgrade, they have friends that like get the best, but they could totally afford to buy a used setup from a buddy that they know is in mint condition. So like they share the love down the line every time. And that's the type of thing that we're trying to help. You don't have to drop everything today, but just know that it's there.
Yeah,
Keep pushing forward.
yeah, exactly. Like in the case of PlayStation, I've loved PlayStation games. Like I've loved the PlayStation brand for such a long time. But the reality is, ever since PlayStation 3, the consoles have gotten progressively laggier and laggier. PlayStation 3,
Yeah.
PlayStation 4, PlayStation 5, and it's a sad reality. So I tried to do what I could to change that.
Esports.
Thank you for the sub, Rockstar. I
Thanks so
appreciate
much
that.
for subscribing.
I'm finally glad. I'm finally glad we're at a point where we're starting to see real progress. Hopefully going forward, a lot of these consoles and PC can hopefully be in parity on the latency front, because one of the problems is with PC, you get to the top of the mountain, right? You have a low latency setup, but everybody's PC is different. Everybody can tune the knobs different. So basically, what I'm trying to say is we're all playing on different versions of the game because we all have different delay, which is a big problem. It's like we need things to be standardized. So that's why, sadly, playing on NetPlay with the optimal configuration, optimal PC, sadly can be one of the most optimal ways to play, because both sides are playing on their own delay, assuming that the net play is not lagging. It's a sad reality. It's kind of a sad reality we're in now, because I love offline events, but it's true.
Well, the cloud parsec stuff you were doing was really freaking impressive, and obviously I know Risha, and I've met the parsec team. I interviewed them, back towards the beginning, I guess, and seeing that fall into place just made me really happy, because I know how hard they tried to get the latency down and to get this to perform for gamers the way it did. And it was funny talking to Chris in that interview, because he's such a nerd like us. Like every time I asked a really nerdy question, you could see his face light up like, oh, I get to talk shop. All right.
Yeah.
So like it was cool. I was very happy that went well. Is that something that you still do, or are things changing with that?
Yes. Yeah. So we still do cloud parsec stuff with the Soul Calibur guys. We still have the RTMP feed. We still have multiple feeds, like, so it's kind of like you're at an offline tournament, but you can switch between every feed. It actually went a step further recently these days. So with the high refresh stuff that I've been doing, specifically for a Marvel 3, it turns out that you can stream 120 FPS Ultimate Marvel 3 in the cloud, and you can play in 120 FPS. So that means that the parsec cloud latency drops even further. So that actually blows my mind. So
I had
basically,
no idea that was possible.
yeah. So basically, what I'm saying is you can stream cloud parsec for free, and obviously the server cost, but you can basically stream it to the internet for free without needing like a high power PC. You can actually do it in the cloud, stream 120 FPS, and the players can play 120 FPS and everything, and it's freaking amazing. I could not believe it. Like, huge shout outs to the Parsec team, and huge shout outs to people like Raisha. When I asked her like all these tech questions, she had everything like on lock. Like she knows what the fuck she's doing.
Yeah,
she definitely knows what the fuck she's
doing.
Yeah,
absolutely. It's so. If you wanted to do that, all you would need then is a laptop or a desktop that could handle whatever the native resolution of your panel and 120 is, right? So you wouldn't actually need, as long as your video card could do 120 hertz, you don't have to have some crazy 3060 graphics card.
Exactly.
It's just going to be good enough to handle the refresh rate.
Exactly. Like as long as the monitor can drive 120 hertz, it's like you can play like in the cloud on a shitty PC at home.
That's incredible.
That's actually
very cool.
I need to do like a video guide on that and actually research it more, because I really think it's groundbreaking.
I wonder if Raspberry Pi 5s are going to come out with 120 hertz support, because that was the impressive thing about Parsec, is that you'd be able to run 60 hertz, of course, but if you had a local very fast PC, like I have my office down here, and if I wanted to play it up on my OLED TV, I could use Parsec to, of course, wired, not wireless, but I could run that on my main TV at 4K 60. I think it runs in 4K. The Pi4 is a little weird with that, but at the very least, 1080p 60, and it's the same latency as if I was sitting downstairs in front of my PC. So it's pretty impressive to see that.
Bro, it's getting there, man. I mean, 120 and 144 hertz. It's almost to the point where it's commoditized at this point. So now, So now I think the stage is set that we can finally start to move past 60 hertz, which is amazing. Also, like another thing that I found in my research, right? So like another thing that people mention is, right, there are diminishing returns when you go past 120, 144 hertz. Basically, the 60 hertz to 120, 144 hertz is the biggest latency jump. And then after you go up, it drops in half with every refresh cycle that you go up: 120, 240, and 480. But however, when I was talking to Blurbusters, he researched that humans can perceive as lag as little as 5 ms difference, which is actually amazing. Like, I did not know that, and that explains a lot why when I play on 480 hertz and I go back to 144, I can actually feel the delay. I can feel the delay difference. So 144 hertz actually feels laggy to me. I have to adjust.
Yeah. So Brian from RetroUSB, the guy who did the AVS and the Power Pack and a whole bunch of stuff, when he was doing his wireless controller, he brought that to a bunch of pro NES Tetris players, and he asked them to play your games, go through and use this controller, and he set up software so that he could dial in the latency, both to see how low he can get it before it disconnected, but also out of curiosity to see where the latency mattered. And pro NES Tetris players are the perfect market, because the NES didn't have a frame buffer, and it was designed to be used on a CRT, which is zero latency. So this is really like the perfect scenario. And he found that 8 milliseconds was when they stopped being able to do their special moves.
That sounds
that goes exactly in line with what you found, with a lot of our other friends have found, is 5 to 8, about half a frame, let's just say. That's when you could actually really notice that difference. So I loved hearing your story, because every time I talk to somebody else, they've all gone down a completely different path to prove the exact same thing. About a half a frame is when pro players start to notice.
Wow. Like, so we've all come to the same conclusion using different ways. Wow. Yeah. I don't know what else to say, guys.
Absolutely. I still get called a fraud for telling people that. Yeah. It's hysterical. But Yeah, the only thing that I'm still not sure of, which we mentioned at the beginning, is there are still people that swear to me that they could tell the difference between 2 milliseconds of latency. And I think most of those people are talking about frames. They just made the honest mistake where they mixed up milliseconds and frames. But I think what it really is all of it adding up. So,
Yes,
you know,
yes. That's a good point.
yeah. So what we talked about before, you know, getting your tweaked settings in, getting everything else, that's when it really matters. But I think if we took your setup at 480 hertz and dropped it to, you know, to 360, I'm not really sure if most pro gamers could really tell a difference.
So it's like I said. So with the 390 hertz Acer monitor I'm using with 0.5 MSGTG and the 480 hertz with 1 MSGTG, it's very hard for me to tell the difference. I can tell the difference, but it's so slight that like it's almost not there for me. But I think you're right. I think people do confuse the frames and milliseconds, and I think that goes back to the supergun lags discussion, you know, that I talked about a couple of weeks back, that I asked you for some numbers. It's like I think direct, it was like what, like 10 US, like direct DB15 versus like 1 point something, like, you know, using Brook UFB and undammed converters, which you actually can't feel, but some people claim that they feel. So again, it's a situation where it's like Stockholm syndrome, guys, you know, like that's basically lagless. You're not going to be able to tell 1 ms. You can tell 1 frame, yes. You can tell 2 frames, yes, but
there might be other things factoring in, though.
Yes.
It is plausible that you are taking the exact same setup. You have an undammed adapter and, you know, in a controller converter board, and then getting that to a supergun, and somebody else has the same supergun, the same undammed adapter, and they are getting latency because the controller adapter might be different. Or, I mean, there's a bunch of different factors.
They could be using,
I tested it with the MC Cthulhu, but there are some shitty ones out there. Most of the ones out there today are great, but if you bought yours 5 or 6 years ago, there's a good chance you could have a frame of lag just in your controller to USB converter.
Oh yeah, for sure. Yeah, and then also they could be using a laggy PS3 stick. You know, like that that will also add delay. Or like that's why it's really important that you guys like reference the Mr. FPGA controller latency chart, so like you can avoid these issues. But yeah, you're totally right about that. You know, like I'll pretty much bring up like a common scenario. You know, again, like I'll bring up a PS4 reference. So PS4 input delay on Unreal tends to be like about 4.5 to 5 frames of delay. Obviously, 60 hertz monitor, you know, it's sub 1 frame. You know, it's like about 12 ms. So there's that as well. And then VSync is turned on. That's like another frame of latency. And then your controller USB polling. What if you're using DualShock 4? What if you're plugging it in wired? We do know that DualShock 4 wired lags more than Bluetooth. That's another frame of latency. So it's like, so yeah, basically people are playing on fucked up setups and they don't even realize it.
Yeah, and you know, that's another thing to just quickly mention is if you're into fight sticks, you don't need to spend $500-600 on some crazy custom one.
No, you don't.
You can, and I'm sure it'll be great, but as long as you just have some patience, you could find a cheap used beat up one that is comfortable for you, and then switch out the stick and buttons and wire it yourself. And this is not like modding consoles where you could ruin the whole thing if you do it wrong. It's very simple. You just need to make sure the buttons fit, and then you just got to solder on signal and ground and get it right and make sure nothing shorts. And that's really it. And you could build your own stick for a fraction of the cost. That, you know, it's not going to look as beautiful as a custom painted, you know, with your own logo on it, beautiful new stick. But you could, like, this one I bought from you is still by far my favorite, the Vuelix.
Oh yeah.
You know, you brought that to a bunch of tournaments. It looks it's, you know, it's well worn, but oh man, I swapped the buttons out with new ones, and it is perfect. I absolutely love it. It's the perfect stick for me.
Yeah.
And I didn't pay that much for it at all, including how much I spent on the new buttons and stuff.
Of course, I made sure to sell it to you at a homie price for sure. Like I'm not gonna try to make any money off you. But yeah, this is what you mentioned. So this is actually a $500 stick. So this was my replacement after I sold you the Hori VLX. So I actually went down the rabbit hole because I didn't want to build it myself. The only improvements over the over the Hori VLX that I sold you, obviously it was swapped out with Brooks, for the lowest latency. So the only changes that I made that are different from the Brooks. So this has the auto DIY inside. It's basically like a 3D printed tray on the actuator. So it makes it for super tight motion. So I'm a person that has bad execution, right? So actually using this stick, I'm able to get super crisp and super low to the ground like inputs, using this stick. I also have like a metal pivot inside to make the motion super smooth. So that's the only change I've done beyond the Hori VLX. Next time we meet, I'll let you try the stick for yourself because I think it's really good for guys like us. Like what we're able to do inputs with a extremely small area of motion. Like I really like it. But you gotta actually try it for yourself.
That was something that the whole New York crew really taught me when I first moved out there and started hanging out with all of you, is that, the stick that you use, it's just like if anybody's into cars, it's just like getting a manual car with a long shift range. No one wants that. You want the short shift distance so you're not wasting time. And it's the same exact theory in that, the smaller distance you could travel, the faster you'll get these moves out. And I don't know why, but I've been in the cars my whole life, and the manual shifter thing I got, but I never thought of it in the context of gaming until I started hanging out with all of you, and I switched pretty instantly afterwards whenever I wanted to get serious about playing.
Yeah, that's the only way. Yeah, that's the only way we can keep up with keyboard style controllers like the hitbox and stuff, because they're bypassing the diagonal inputs, so they can actually get motions out faster than any joystick possible. I understand why people use it, and that's why I'm using the mods I mentioned, like the auto DIY and the and the metal pivot, is that so we can be on par with some of the hitbox users. Basically,
the first time I saw that, my mind was blown. I think I went over to Jose and was like, "Hey, what's up with the dude using a keyboard?"
Oh yeah,
and he's he didn't have enough money for a controller growing up, so he learned on his keyboard, and now he whoops everybody's ass with it. It's like, really? I just never put two and two together, but yeah, it totally makes sense now. And for somebody that played on a D-pad and a stick to switch to only a keyboard or a hitbox, that's a learning curve, right? That's something you would have to absolutely work on. So I could totally understand rather switching to a better stick than trying to just relearn how to use your left hand while playing video games.
Yeah. It's basically like a learning curve, and it doesn't work for every character and every situation. So basically, you have to use what's best for you. I have to ask, when you saw the keyboard example, like were they using it on an arcade cabinet with the undamped converters?
Yes.
Oh yeah. So like I said, again, that's another situation where guys, it's to the point where. And this is kind of blasphemy when I say this, because we're all like CRT heads and like we're all arcade cabinet nerds. It's to the point now where when I go to Arcade Brooklyn and I'm entering a tournament, I will play on the stick with the USB converters in 1000 hertz polling, and I get a better experience than playing on the cabinet direct, right? So I know that shit doesn't lag. That's why it's crazy when people were saying Super Guns lag, USB lags. No, it doesn't.
Yeah, that's more misinformation, and that's the perfect example, because Arcade Brooklyn bends over backwards to make sure all of their shit is top tier. But if that's the stick that you are used to and it performs the same, you will always play better on that than just walking up to an arcade machine that has equal quality but different sticks and buttons.
Oh yeah. It's pretty much only because that the actual cabinet doesn't have the auto DIY mod installed. Right, it's the only reason. So it's just personal preference. It's not that the stick is better. It's just what I'm used to.
Yeah, no, exactly, and I love that. I love how they really bend over backwards to make sure anybody could roll up with whatever gear they want. And I was always so impressed by that. Every one of their cabs has the USB ports in it. Every one of their cabs looks good too. I laughed so hard the first time Jose picked up a CRT off the side of the road and did the tube swap with the Neo Geo machine, and you could not tell the difference between the original arcade monitor and the CRT that, the beat up old one that was repurposed. Loved that shit.
Like the only thing is that obviously using the USB solution, there's no macros, so a lot of the console babies have to hold that shit basically. but at least they can play on it. So yeah.
So I wanted to ask you about that, because that's something that, not being a pro player, it seems pretty cut and dry to me. But why is there still a discussion about macros in tournaments?
Oh,
I would assume that you're never allowed to use them.
Oh, so I'll tell you. So I'll tell you pretty much what it is, and this is my personal opinion, guys. This is not fact, right? So for classic games, my personal opinion again, I personally believe that macros should not be used for classic games because the games were not designed like around the macro, right? So for those games, you can do things that were not really possible, without a macro, or you get higher input consistency in general. It's kind of like a gray area. So in some of the recent ports and compilations, by Capcom, some of these games they add a macro, some of them do not, right? So like I said, like that's kind of why it's really like a gray area, But I do understand, in the modern FGC these days, controller accessibility is a thing. You want people with disabilities or people that can't use common controllers to be able to use macro. So I understand like both sides of it. Even though I personally feel that macros can kind of be cheating, I can understand the case for it, being like the other way. And and at the end of the day, I want more people to play these games, right? So like that's pretty much how I feel on it. For newer games, however, newer games are actually built around the macro. They're designed for macros. So I think like in the case of newer games, you should absolutely use them, and you're actually messing yourself up by not using them. One of the common examples I can mention is Guilty Gear. So Guilty Gear has like a button where you can use like a dash macro. So instead of tapping forward on the stick, you can press a button, tap down, press a button, tap down, and you can get extremely crisp movement, right? And like in that case, like the game's absolutely designed around the dash macro, so you should absolutely be using it. I hope that made sense.
100%, yeah. Because I mean, if I could use all the macros in the world, if I go up to a pro player, they're going to whoop my ass no matter what. So it's it's one of those things where it's not like a beginner could just walk in and beat everybody just because they got macros. But it was just something I was curious about. But that makes total sense now, 100%.
Yeah. At the end of the day, like fighting games are a knowledge check. So you can have all the advantages you want. If you don't have the knowledge, it's going to show. If you're cheating, it's going to show. Over time, of course.
Yeah, 100%. So are you still doing crazy streaming rig stuff? Do you still have like a bunch of awesome PCs that you're using to do all this?
Oh yeah. So I'm still using the PC, that I've been using for a couple of years right now. It's getting to the point where like it's time for me to upgrade because now we're getting into AV1 codec is starting to be a thing. The RTX 4000 series is about to come out. Streaming is finally starting to progress a little bit, and 120 FPS streaming on Twitch is actually a thing. So now it's getting close to the point where like I actually need to like consider upgrading my hardware. So it's definitely something I got to think about. Still waiting for the HDMI 2.1 capture cards to come out, right? But then but then once it does, I'll be ready. I have the first HDMI 2.1 splitter, right? It's just sitting there collecting dust, waiting for an HDMI 2.1 capture card to come out.
That's funny. Because that's something that I went down the road of trying to capture lossless 4K 60. So it's not truly uncompressed, and there really isn't a need for truly uncompressed, but lossless, no color compression, no frame drops. And it was really, I started it to test this, the 4K scaler thing. I just put the video out. But to be honest, the real reason that I wanted to get this down was for whatever future scalers come out. I know Mike Chi's been teasing that 4K scaler with the part shortage, who knows when it'll actually get here. But
I can't wait for that.
I wanted to make sure I was up to the task so I could prove to everybody if it's legit or not. And it's Mike Chi, so of course it's going to be legit.
Yeah,
but still,
no, of course. We love Mike.
I got a new
here.
PC. I got an i9 processor. The only thing I was unsure of is I had entered the Newegg Shuffle every day for like 6 months, and the only time I won was a motherboard GPU combo. And the motherboard was close to what I would have wanted anyway. So I said, all right, I'll just use it. And I think that was the bottleneck here, because every test I ran, I couldn't figure it out. I was getting frame drops. It was, I wasn't able to do 4K 60, but I could do 1440p 60. I could do 4K 30. And we thought it was software. And then Artemio and his friend Rollman and Dustin Sutton were on a group chat with me for like 5 hours yesterday.
Oh wow.
I mean, I got everybody involved. I got Ps4 involved. I got tech. I got the whole R3 wiki. I mean, over the course of the past month, like I have wasted like 40 hours of people's time, and it's not just about me and my rig. I think we should all know what are the specs are needed for 4K 60 capture.
Lossless. No, lossless.
Lossless.
Yeah. So to put it in perspective, guys. So what I basically do with 4K 60, it's not lossless, right? So Bob, you know, as crazy as my streaming setup is, Bob has an entirely different use case than mine that requires more power and more bandwidth than what I actually push to you guys. Because lossless, I mean, compressed in comparison is very easy compared to what Bob's trying to do. Were you ever able to figure out the PCI lane situation?
So that's what the final 2 or 3 tests we did yesterday. Art was nice enough to let me borrow a fancy ass 8K data path capture card that I've been loving. But I got it for 4K 60 lossless capture. And the last 2 tests, I ran my PC overnight. I used some custom software that was written to do a memory test because I'm hoping maybe I just bought the wrong RAM. Maybe if I just upgrade my RAM to a better brand and more of it, that'll solve all this. But I think the real reason is not enough lanes.
Yeah.
That's
pretty much that's pretty much what I thought. So like my understanding, I was streaming when you asked me these questions. Like I was thinking like maybe Bob has like a 44 lane motherboard setup, so he's actually probably constrained on lanes. Like he might need to unfortunately upgrade to Threadripper 3 or Epic, which has the lanes basically quadrupled. Which is so much free.
What was the 2 clues were you teaching me about lanes years ago that I didn't realize that we had hit that much of a bottleneck yet. But I had some old ass S-Video composite capture card in there that I rarely use, but I like to have it for when I need it. And I was like, you know what? Let me take everything out, because I've been building PCs since half the people in the chat were before they were born, probably. And I just know sometimes shit conflicts with other things. And I took that out, and I got, I was getting like 10 seconds in a row of 4K 60 lossless, and then it was dropping frames. And then I pulled that card out, and I immediately got like 20 seconds before it started dropping. And that's when I went, I bet you it's lanes. And I bet you that card they're not supposed to be active. You're supposed to be able to have every card slot in your computer filled, and unless you're actually accessing it, it's not using the lanes, but it doesn't work like that. It's only a theory. So
it's running out of
I do think it's a lane issue, which means I gotta start from scratch. So
that's gonna suck. You're probably running out of lanes, and it's important to remember that that on these motherboards, like some of the devices you plug in, they actually share lanes and bandwidth with some of the PCI lanes in your machine. Like a common thing is like so with my rig, I have a 44 lane CPU rig. It's pretty much maxed out. Like I can add no further. But when I use the M2 slot, it uses up 4 lanes, from something else. So it's a real struggle. So basically, AMD is the goat on this. I also want to give a shout out to the homie Fart Noodle, because he's actually been in the chat, and he's one of the guys that pioneered a lot of the streaming tech. So he understands everything exactly like what the fuck we're talking about.
That's hysterical.
So shout out to
I guess I got to get rid of this one at some point, which is lightning fast otherwise. But but I guess I need a Threadripper. And the other thing that we were debating, and a lot of people got in hard about this. And by the way, I appreciate the shit out of anybody that helped. But we thought maybe the type of SSD I was using was going to be a factor. So like Samsung Pro with the TLC flash versus the Samsung Plus with the other one. And we were getting some differences in that. Like I ran some uncompressed, not lossless, but actually uncompressed tests. So we're like 20 seconds get you a 40 gig file or something like that.
Jesus Christ.
And I was able to record more with the Pro, but it didn't seem to be hitting the bandwidth limits at all. And that was the other confusing thing. And Ps4 was the one that told me, I kept saying, like, how come when I bring up the task manager, nothing's hitting 100? And he said, well, it could be lanes. That would explain it. But the other thing is, if it is the flash on your NVMe drive, it's going to register as 0 because it can't keep up. So it's not like it's writing at 100% and dropping. The hard drive's just going, fuck this, I'm out, and it's going to show as 0. So it's a lot of people have been helping, but hopefully soon we'll be able to have a guide on how to get 4K 60 lossless capture.
Yeah,
and it's a hard thing too, because like if you're somebody who's gaming, you don't need that at all.
You don't.
If you want to have the most badass streams in the planet, you do not need this. But if you're somebody who tries to do analysis of video games, as to compare what version's better, or if you're dropping frames, you do need this. So
yeah,
it's something that affects a lot of people.
It's a completely different use case, and Farp Noodle pretty much coined it perfectly. Like this could be fixed on the next version of Threadripper. Like we could also be running into like Windows bandwidth limitations, you're running into PCI bandwidth limitations. We might need to upgrade to PCI4 NVMe 2 drives to actually get what you're trying to accomplish. So it's like
tried the PCIe 4. The first thing that I thought was, after we determined it wasn't one specific type of software, the next thing after that was, well, I've run into so many weird Windows issues from the moment 8 started all the way up to 11. So we did the final testing yesterday, the very long marathon run in Linux, just to remove that as a factor. But something, I don't know if this will affect you or anybody in the chat, but one thing I noticed this year that drove me crazy was, if you take a Windows 10, maybe 8, I hate 8, but 10 or 11, and you send it to a device that has a native resolution of 4K, or at least the EDID says it does. So capture cards or monitors, and you change the Windows resolution to 1080p, it makes all the icons bigger, but it still sends it the native resolution.
Oh, God.
So if you're doing an analysis of stuff and you're plugging it into a capture card, that's like if you're going, like if you're capturing a Windows PC with another PC, it'll really mess with things. So I've been starting to move a lot more over to Linux for stuff like that.
I see.
And yeah,
Lord must wonder, what the guys at Digital Foundry must go through. All right. To actually get this shit out to the people, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah, I talk to John all the time, and that's, when I first interviewed John, I didn't realize the advice he was giving until I was actually in Brooklyn Video Games. I walked in, and they had autoplay on, and my interview came up, and John had basically explained how he does almost everything. And I was laughing so hard, because it's like Michael Jordan explaining how to dunk. You could have a high-speed camera that shows every move he's making, but you're still not going to fucking dunk like Michael Jordan. And it's the same thing. John explained everything that he does, and most people still aren't going to put the work in. But the one thing he hasn't done yet is through a PC. He uses the Atomos. He actually hadn't run into that problem either, but he was one of the first people I went to, because I was like, I know somebody that captures 4K all the time. And same thing with Carsey. He also uses the Atomos. So
he was one that put me onto that device. I was pretty impressed.
So when is AM5 supposed to be released?
I think like Q3 or Q2 of this year. It's right about the time. That's why I think right now it's getting close to the time where I have to upgrade myself, because now there's finally a huge enough technology leap where I can start upgrading. But once again, it's going to be a situation where we're running into OS limits. We're going to be running into bandwidth limits. We're trying to push things beyond what these consumer OSs can actually support. And we need to wait for the software to catch up, right? So
we're working on that. I'll tell you afterwards. I'm sorry I can't tell it publicly yet, but we're working on the OS part, and the target is us, streamers, content creators, and the goal is bootable off a USB stick.
Oh,
so you have your badass rig, because remember, once you boot, it's just in RAM at that point, so it doesn't matter. You need USB 3, but like I have right here, I have a USB 3.2 by 2, so it in an NVMe drive that runs at 2000 megs a second, and this is way overkill. You could just use a basic USB 3 stick, but the goal is, yes, you have your main PC with, throw Windows on it, use it for whatever, do whatever you need to do, but if you're streaming or capturing, then you could boot into a custom Linux in order to do all that stuff. So we're working on it, but it's way over my head. I'm basically I'm like the like a kid following his parents to work on Bring Your Kid to Work Day. Like, hey guys, show me how to do this. But we're definitely trying.
That's awesome, man.
Somebody in the chat just said AM5 will have 24 freely assignable PCI Express 5.0 lanes. Hell yeah.
Yeah, hell yeah.
I think that's what I need.
Yeah, hell yeah.
So I'll pick up one of those, a new processor, and then we'll figure it out from there.
Yeah. From my understanding is once you move to PCI 5, it's like we won't need as many lanes because like the bandwidth will be there, right? So it's definitely gonna be interesting to see. And your stories are also pretty cool because like I mean I've always known this, but it's another reminder once again that everybody's trying to do the same thing, and we're all at most 1 degree of separation. I hope a lot of the guys that you mentioned actually come to Retro Creates. That would be
Retro World Expo, the end of August, the last weekend. That is going to be the hangout. It's a typical retro gaming expo, vendors and all that stuff, but we're going to have a RetroRGB section, which is basically just all of our friends have booths in the same area. We're going to be hanging out all weekend. That is going to be a blast. There's going to be people flying in from all over. Artemio's coming from Mexico with Roman. Ronnie's probably coming from Lebanon. That'll be the longest trip so far that people have gone. It's going to be good shit. So that's going to be one that's be pretty big.
Like I hope Digital Foundry comes. I hope Epos Vox comes. I hope MVG comes. You know, I really respect that guy. I'd love to meet him.
Yeah. Oh, that's right. You haven't met him yet. He is exactly how you would expect. He is a real dude. There's no bullshit there. That's a good guy. He really is that smart. He really is that much fun. I like him a lot.
He's also he's also one of the guys that's been retweeting all of my stuff when I post all the latency findings. Right. So like that's pretty much. Well, that's pretty much one of the best recommendations I could get because like the dude's a fucking programmer, right? So when I say crazy shit, like I'm not a programmer, I'm just a pro gamer and a streamer. So I don't know anything like about this stuff like at the level that he does. So when I say shit like, hey, like you know, Sony PlayStation should have 1,000 hertz USB polling, that'll solve a lot of the issues. And MVG likes it. I'm like, yeah, like I know I'm right. He spotted me.
Yeah, we're lucky. There's a lot of really, really awesome people in the scene, and I'm hoping to get them all over to Retro World Expo so we all get to hang out and you know, be a part of that. So
the last time we were at Retro Creates, my personal favorite moment was when it was me, you, Jose, the G-Scar creator and the OSSC creator. We're all having a conversation, and we're basically all explaining to them like our use case. And then Super G was like, "You're the guy that bought 8 G-Scarts?" And then Marcus was like, "Yo, I've never seen anybody blow up my OSSC the way you guys do." And then he's like, "What do you guys?"
Well, that wasn't you. That was that one super gun with the audio sending full voltage without protection. That was funny. That was the
oh boy.
And you know what's funny about that is that's a perfectly reasonable thing to have happen because when those super guns were designed, they didn't have digital scalers in mind. So that's actually a totally normal thing if you don't know what you're doing. But I just remember that creator's reaction was like, it's everybody else's fault, not mine. You did it wrong and you did it. That was funny.
Oh, sorry. When I said blowing it up, I didn't literally mean the super gun situation that I mentioned. I meant blowing it up in the sense that we were using all the equipment to the max quality all in the same place at once.
That's funny. Yeah, you're right. But there was that tournament that blew out like 4 OSSCs and a couple of G-Scars. That's the one I was thinking of.
It blew out one OSSC and one G-Scar, and you actually covered it in the news. Also, shout out to the homie Chobo Ruin. So everybody in my chat, pretty much, you know, like whenever like I'm just chilling or doing like just talking, I pretty much watch your videos. And I break it down. I remember when I did the CPS2 and CPS3 HDMI discussion, you know, I was pulling up your video and basically educating people. So everybody here at NYC Furby is well tuned in to everything that you're doing. So that's why you're getting all the love in the chat.
Yeah, dude, I love those meetups. That's why I want everybody to show up for this one because I just remember I think I was interviewing Artemio and I came out and I walked around the corner and Tim Worthington, Super G, and Marcus were talking and I'm like, This is incredible. Doesn't feel real.
This is incredible.
This feels like, you know, like we're all here together. That was cool as fuck. And there was a couple people that showed up that like they were a little nervous, and like they went and
Shy.
sat by
They're shy.
themselves. And I remember I was talking with a bunch of us, and I was like, "Hey, let's go make sure they know that they're welcome here." So
Oh,
like
yeah.
10 people got up, grabbed their chairs, and all just sat down and started a conversation and completely broke the ice. It was a really it was a good time. I appreciated that.
Oh yeah, sure. I mean, like Marcus was a little bit timid at first, but then once you talk to him, the guy's like a freaking genius. So like it's like the shit he's saying is over my head and your head both.
Yeah.
But also, like, I mean, your first Retro Creates gathering was so important. So after we had that conversation that I mentioned with Super G and Marcus, Marcus automatically understood that we knew what the fuck we were talking about, and he asked us what improvements do we need for CPS2 and CPS3 HDMI. And we asked them, we were like, yo, add 240p pass through, add a 480p mode, right? Add 1200p. And like he blew it up away and more. He actually went the distance and added 1440p video to CPS2 and 3. So you guys are freaking welcome. You guys are freaking welcome, FTC, because I'm not sure if you would have done that like without the conversations that we had at Retro Create. So thank you for hosting something like that. That's amazing.
So, just to talk about that for a moment, that idea came up. A friend of mine actually kind of came up with the initial idea and then handed that to My Life in Gaming and I to run with. And I had this idea that if we just get a bunch of people in the same room together, not only is it more fun in person, but when you're talking about people from all around the planet, when you're in front of somebody, the mannerisms, your body language, everything's different. And I grew up in a family that, like, my grandparents were from Eastern Europe. So like half the time when I went to a family gathering, like nobody spoke English. So like I learned that from a very young age, like being there with somebody and all that. And I kind of like, I wanted to keep it small because it was almost even too big last time, because I wanted everybody to be able to talk to each other. And I wanted everybody to be able to understand how important they are and where their role lies in this whole scene and how we could help each other grow. And it's funny because a lot of people who showed up there kind of pulled me aside that night and were like, I got to be honest, I had no idea what the fuck this was about. I just knew that you told me, trust me and come. So I was like, all right, I trust Bob. And now I get it. I had no clue why I was coming, but I get it now. So the unfortunate problem with that was as soon as people started seeing pictures, then it was just a month of trolling. I got a couple of stalkers out of that still fuck with me to this day because they felt like we were BFFs and I didn't invite them to my birthday party. People I've talked to once or twice in my life, like, and there were actually some mistakes. I did forget to invite some people that should have been there. That was on me. I'm sorry.
It's so funny.
That's why this one we're just doing it Retro World Expo.
It's so funny that you mentioned that. It's so funny that you mentioned that because while the super secret Illuminati RGB retro meetup was happening, like Smoke Monster posted a photo and I had to ask him to take it down because I was like, wait. You're not supposed to know that I'm here. I'm actually ducking another event to be there. Please take it down.
Yeah, it was funny. So yeah, that's why just Retro World. We'll all be there. Everybody will be fun. I'll try to figure out a way to get everybody over to my house beforehand. And you know what? If you're not invited, it's because you're not pretty enough. So,
oh God! Oh, too funny, man. Ruin, I see you. Like a couple, like I said, a lot of the guys in the chat, like they're so thirsty, like about how to upgrade their setup, how to get high quality video. So guys like Ruin, like he's somebody that I've sent your videos to quite a few times, and he's a personal friend of mine, and like I sent him down the rabbit hole, and now he's producing like high quality retro video, and I couldn't be happier.
Awesome. Yeah, always love to hear that, because that's the other thing too, is there's a lot of people out there that they don't want more people in the scene because they don't want more competition, and everybody we know is the opposite. It's like, no, there's more than enough room. If you're a fraud, you'll be called out immediately. And there's more than enough room for people that want to do it casually or that actually want to put the real effort into. Because that's the other thing that pisses me off so much, is when I hear people say there's too many streamers. Fuck that. If you want to play a game and you have 3 or 4 friends that you're close with that live far away now, stream with each other. Maybe you grow an audience, maybe you don't, but do it. Do it because why not? There's no such thing as too much streamers. That
Oh
part's
yeah.
bullshit.
No, oh yeah, but you know, like what I found is it's like, you know, even if you lead a horse to water, you can't necessarily make them drink. So even if you tell people, exactly how to do it, they quickly realize that once they actually start trying to do it, that it might not be cut out for them, or like, oh shit, this is actually like really hard, or this requires like a lot of fucking work. It's not that easy. That's what I found.
That's why so many drama channels pop up.
Oh god,
because you know, they get their cameras and they get their overlays and they try real hard for like 6 months, and now they have like 1,000 followers, which is awesome.
That is awesome.
But then they're pissed. Well, why don't I have Digital Foundry numbers? Oh, I don't know. Maybe because Richard's been doing this since the fucking 90s. Like, what do you mean, why don't I have Digital Foundry numbers? That's not how it works. You don't just wake up and become famous. Like, you work your butt off. So that's it. They're like, well, you know what? I could get more views just talking shit and being an asshole. And there you go. It's the birth of modern drama channels and retro. And in modern gaming too, in a lot of ways.
Yeah. You know, it's important to remember in content creation, you know, everybody grows at their own pace. Never be jealous of anybody that's growing faster than you, and only worry like about yourself and your own hustle, right? Because you can't control any factors outside of that. And also collab with other like-minded people, you know, help each other grow together too. That also really helps.
Yeah, absolutely. I love collabs. I say this, but like all of RetroRGB from the beginning has been about shouting out wherever we got the info from, the sources. Like, it's all about making sure we all grow together, and it's cool to see how many people are on board and how many people really want to see all this stuff blow up. Because, I mean, just the more we talk about this stuff, more prices drop too, right? Like, imagine if I mean, I hate to, you know, I was just talking shit about drama channels, but here we go. Now it's time for some drama. Imagine if Pound never existed and those piece of shit $10 cables that don't work right didn't flood the market.
Oh god.
How much more of a market would there be for things like the Retro Tanks or the upcoming Morph for the OSSC or anything like that? So there could have been more of those made, which means the price would have dropped. So the more we blow it up, the more we get the good info out there, the better it is for everybody. And that's why it really pisses me off when Intech Gaming comes around saying that lag doesn't matter because you can't see more than 45 frames a second anyway. Like, you know, the Pound cable bullshit, there's a whole backstory with that. There's a lot of really awful shit. And, you know, when Limited Run Games, which I like them, by the way, Limited Run Games is a company that's doing a fine job as being a company. They're not your personal concierge for collecting. They're not the saviors of video games. They're a company. But when they supported those garbage cables, I was like, this is fucked up. You're now telling people who want to spend money on rare stuff that it's okay to buy this. So... I know. I agree with you on that. It's also a double-edged sword because at the same time, you know, like a lot of the stuff you cover is retro, and that means it's rare. So the second something hits the RetroRGB channel, the prices start jumping up a lot. So you know, it's give and take, like, you know, but thankfully, like, things like the Mister actually balance it out, because even if the price of the real hardware go up because of your coverage, it's like, you know, you can still get it cheaply to the common gamer today. So I think I understand both sides of it. But, you know, thankfully, like, you know, I researched all this stuff before you started blowing it up, so I was able to get it at a cheap price. Well, you know, I try to send you one of everything before it goes up anyway, so I want to try to make sure you always get hooked up. If there was ever somebody to put a product through its paces, I mean, going through you, like, if it's going to break, it's going to break at one of those tournaments where there's 1 million people and there's no time to dick around. You got to get it done and plug it in and just go. So, yeah, it's that is the best testing ground for this stuff.
Oh yeah, of course. You know, like, I'm pleased to be able to test like a lot of these projects at the products, I should say, at like the biggest gaming events and like in the biggest, most stressful environments. You know, doing things that the creators, like, you know, wouldn't have possibly considered. Like, for example, like at Defend the North, when I was trying to do a DC HDMI run 350 feet, and I had to use SDI conversion, right? And the DC HDMI didn't work because the HDMI cable distance over 300 feet, like, what was pretty messed up. And then I had to use OSSC in a line 2X mode to feed to SDI as a workaround for capture. Shit like that. That's the kind of shit I'm talking about.
And that's the perfect example, because that's the type of group of creators right there. Like, I imagine if you texted Dan, his first reaction would be, what the fuck are you trying to do?
Yeah.
And his second reaction would be, that's really neat. Let me go get my SDI converter and see if I can make it.
Yeah.
So the perfect crew. Christoph, over there in Germany programming new timings to try and make their SDI. Like that is a crew that would definitely be the perfect to work with for crazy stuff like that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Like it's definitely like an endless rabbit hole. Oh God. Like it's fun, but it's like it can get really expensive really fast. But it's absolutely
I mean, if you're doing pro level streaming, if you just
sure.
want a game at home, that's totally different. Because the one thing I try to just beat into people's brains is if you have older consoles that you want to play, grab any CRT that you could find, grab a composite video cable, and start from there. Zero lag, it's going to look totally fine. And then decide if you want to go the rabbit hole of playing on flat panels or getting a PVM or all that stuff. But even arcade games and super guns, there's other ways to get that stuff working where you don't need to spend $1 million.
Sure.
But if you want to, we have all the options in the world that you could choose from nowadays. So
more choice. More choice is always great. So I'm really happy you always cover the low end options, the mid end options, and the high end options. And sometimes there's some excellent low end options that work great for any gamer.
Yeah, one of my favorite things was when I did that the worst scaler in retro gaming about that SCART to or the HDMI converter.
Oh yeah, that's
in the first half of the first third of the video is here's everything that's wrong with it, and then the middle is like, here's why are other alternatives and what's broken, and then the entire last part of the video is, but here's a million things that it's actually really good for, that's worth your money if you do these things. And I loved the whole streaming aspect. I loved splitting your output so that you could game on a CRT and use this piece of crap to get a pretty damn nice looking stream. 5 to 7 frames of lag doesn't mean shit on a stream if you're gaming on a CRT and streaming through that.
Does not. You might need to compensate for the audio delay, but that's what streaming software is for. Yeah.
Yeah.
There you go.
And heck, even like games that switch between resolutions, like that's another thing that was good for too, because it improperly processed the video.
Yeah, because of the frame
buffer. But that's good.
Good. Let's go. Yeah. The 240p to 480i conundrum was definitely something that was baffling us for a while. So.
Yeah, and it's funny. Christoph and Dan solved that in the PS1 digital. Mike G solved that with triple buffer mode. And going forward, I think every solution is going to have a buffered solution, so that's no longer a problem for gamers on flat panels or streamers.
Oh yeah, that was why I recommended the SIG adapter because it solved that issue. but before any of the existing options you mentioned actually came out. But man, I'm so excited for the future. All these next gen scalers are going to come out are quite amazing.
Yeah,
quite amazing.
Yeah, there's a lot going on, and because I've worked with devs for most of my life, I do have to say that as much as I'm always looking to test the next thing, that doesn't mean that what you have today is instantly shit when the next thing comes out. The original OSSC is still amazing. Just update the firmware. The Tink 5X is always going to be amazing. The FrameMeister is still great for streaming. It was never my favorite solution anyway because of a few different things, but for streamers, it's amazing. But yeah, that said, I can't wait to see the next gen of stuff. Mike's teasing the 4K scalers, pixel effects with their auto detection, and a lot of the features they're coming up with. It's going to be a big deal coming up pretty soon.
Yeah, absolutely. And just to mention, just to touch up on that point, one of the reasons why I keep the OSSC around, still, it's still a great device, and it's still my de facto go-to scaler for when I want to capture arcade boards, since I can dial in the timing.
Yeah. So I might as well show this here. I mean, I couldn't think of a better stream or interview to show this on. So Marcus just sent me the latest version of the Dex board. Ooh. And this is the DE10 Nano. So this is the same thing that runs off the Mister. And this is just a board that plugs into it that runs the OSSC Pro firmware. So it's Marcus's same code, but it's running on this Dex board. And this allows for multi-purpose use, which I'm always obsessed with multi-purpose devices. So now if you're on a budget, you buy the DE10 Nano and a RAM stick, which would go here, and you could get yourself an awesome gaming solution. And you add this thing on in any console or arcade board or PC, that's not supported on the Mister yet, you could run it through and you basically just swap out the SD card, treat it like a cartridge, and you could use this as the scaler. So I originally tested the OSSC Pro, and it was absolutely amazing analog video output. So hopefully it'll be the same with this, and it'll be another choice. So I should do a stream on this in the upcoming week or so, but this is pretty cool because the OSSC Pro was delayed because of the part shortage, which I think was the right move. Sad, but the right thing to do rather than release something that you can't really make. But this is the perfect interim thing to hold everybody off. So you could use it. It's going to be fairly cheap. Not sure when they're going up for sale. I did get permission to show this, but I'm not quite sure when they'd be ready to buy it. But I'm really looking forward to testing that out. So.
That sounds amazing. It's like, and it's also multi-purpose. It's like you can basically tackle two birds with one stone. It's like you have the OSSC. You basically have most of the features of the OSSC Pro and a Mister all in one. That's incredible.
Yeah, and the OSSC is really going to still be needed for a while for arcade stuff because there's so many random timings coming out of an arcade board that never mattered with a CRT ever. You plug that thing into an RGB input of any CRT, it's going to work. And if you need to make any adjustments, remember in arcade board land, one arcade board to one cabinet. So if you needed to change anything, you change the potentiometers in the back that recenters the image. But it doesn't work that way with digital. You have to have something that can understand the signals that are being sent. So the OSSC and Marcus's products are always going to be relevant regardless of what else is out there because the RT5X, at least at the moment, is the one to go for consoles. But retro PCs and arcade boards, I don't know. I think we're still going to need stuff like this for a while.
Yeah, absolutely. Like it's definitely like a huge rabbit hole. I'm still keeping my OSSC, just for that purpose. It's the only device I can use where I can stream Ultimate Mortal Kombat 3, for example. I can't do it with any other way. It's like we've tried so many different solutions, and basically get fucked, more or less.
So let me ask your opinion on this. Hotego said Jose Tejada, a FPGA developer that works on Mr. Cores, definitely check out his Patreon. Just a badass developer working on all this cool stuff. But he had mentioned that he is going to start working on FPGA cores for my favorite fighting games, the Mortal Kombat series, at some point.
That's a big deal.
But to hold you off for now, the Ultimate Mortal Kombat 3 for PlayStation on the PlayStation Core. How close is that to the arcade experience, you think?
So I'm not a UMK3 expert. I do support the game, but I don't think I don't necessarily think that it's accurate to the I believe on PlayStation Core it's MK Trilogy, not UMK3.
Oh, you're right. It is the trilogy. Yes.
Yeah. So in that case, trilogy is fine. Trilogy is fine to use. However, it is a completely different game, and it's broken, but in a fun way. And it's good that you brought that up because I'm gonna ask Drusus, after this conversation, the guy that made UMK3 Plus,
yes.
What are some of the differences between MK Trilogy and that? So. Thank you for bringing up that question. But yeah, no, I think MK Trilogy would actually be dope on that.
Because I was using the 32X core to play MK2, and it was fun. It obviously is not going to compare to the original arcade, but it was fun. So
yeah, also infinitely cheaper.
True.
Those MK boards, especially these days, are coming at a premium.
Yeah, and they almost all need repair to the point where I purposely bought one with a broken soundboard for much cheaper, knowing that if it's going to break anyway, let's do it now and let's have it done by somebody who knows what they're talking about. Unfortunately, though, I've gotten a reputation for every single thing I pass over to Cruz is a nightmare. I've never I gave him an NES a couple months ago, and I'm like, hey, just pop this thing off, reflash it. It'll take me 3 hours. It'll take you 30 minutes. And 8 hours later, the CPU blew, the board was wrong, and I have the worst luck with this stuff. I always end up, and now I really thought that one was going to be an easy one, but no. Poor Cruz.
Yeah. Jose keeps mentioning that. He's like, Bob always says we broken stuff, and it's a blow up, right?
Yeah.
Oh God.
I don't know. At least out of all the stuff though, the MKs that I sent him, those I think were the easiest because he knew they were broken coming in. We knew what the issue was because it was the typical issue. So it wasn't like it wasn't a super easy fix, but for Cruz it was. So perfect, right? It's just the stuff that never seems complicated. The stuff where I'm like, oh, I could do this myself, but Jose could do it better. Those are the ones where it just completely goes to shit, and I feel terrible about it.
Oh God! Well, like I said, thankfully, thank God we have the friends who we have, man. Otherwise, we'd be up Shit's Creek.
Yeah, that's for sure.
Yep. Yep. Jose is the type of guy that definitely deserves six figures for what he's doing, man. Like,
I wish I was rich. I wish I could afford to pay him triple for all the crap I put him through over the years.
I know. I know. And it's without people like him. Without people like him, shit wouldn't get done. In the New York retro gaming scene, everything literally is traced back to him. Every arcade board, like every Japanese candy cabinet that is in New York, he has personally serviced one way or another.
Yeah, that's some funny shit.
Mm-hmm. Oh,
hey, so what's coming up next for you? What's what are the things that you'll be working on? What are the tournaments you'll be going to? Like what's going to be coming up on your channel? Everything around it.
So I'm gonna be this month. I'm still gonna be doing some. I'm gonna be doing some MVC2. Like MVC2 has seen like a bit of a resurgence. Thanks to Dan and Christoph. For the DC Digital. We've converted all of the players to our DC HDMI. Unfortunately, though, I had to put some of the players on blast a little bit. They ended up cheaping out and getting some of the cheaper options in their Dreamcast, which is actually fucking them over later on down the road. Prime example, so a lot of these players that they cheaped out, they got a clone GD-EMU, and now like they're locked out of updating their DC Digital without sending it back to Cruz. Things like that like actually make it hard for me to run Marvel 2 tournaments, because while my DC HDMI is up to spec, and I'm not using a clone GD-EMU, a lot of these players, they save some money, so like their DC HDMIs are not updated. Sometimes dropouts happen because they don't update the firmware, things like that, right? But thankfully we've all sent them to Cruz, and they had to pay more for their mistake. But in the end, without struggle there is no progress, right? So
yeah, true.
So
it's funny though. I'm actually next week I'll be doing a follow-up podcast about clone companies, and I'll be calling them out directly this time. No more bullshit talking in general terms. I'm going hard, because if they're going to come after me, then you see what you get. But one thing that's always been a weird issue is the GDMU clones, because first of all, no one knows who cloned it, so who are we going to get mad at? And second of all, I guarantee you, I bet one of my BVMs that most people selling those have no idea that it's a clone. Most people are just like, okay, I sourced this part from this warehouse in China, now I'll sell it on my Amazon store, and they have no idea that it's a subpar product. Maybe they don't care, because, whatever, but so that's a problem, because it's not like we could tell people, oh, just go here and buy the real one.
Yep, you can't.
Everybody's just stuck getting the clone, so the only other choice is the mode, but that's really expensive. That's more than double the price, and it's a great product, but it's way easier to load Dreamcast games. That was never more evident than when I did the stream with Destiny, where we were only playing like 4 or 5 games, but getting them on the GDMU versus loading them on the mode was a totally different experience.
Oh yeah,
It is pricey.
Like I actually have the USB GD-ROM in my personal Dreamcast, right? So like I was able to bypass a lot of those issues that you mentioned. But yeah, like 100% of the people I've asked, I'm like, no, when they have a GD-EMU installed, I was like, did you actually buy it from the unit's page? And they're like, who's the unit? And that's how I know. right away. To CVS Kid X, you never thought you'd see this crossover. This isn't the first time we've actually crossed paths. This is like the 100th time we've crossed paths. Like I was actually on Bob's channel years ago when he was just starting in his office. So this is actually not anything new.
Yeah, not only were you on my channel once, so I hit a real rough patch like 4-ish years ago, something like that. And you and Carsey showed up at my office in Brooklyn and were like, you basically were like, I hear you're in trouble. What's for sale? We'll take whatever you got. We know you need help. I'll never fucking forgot that. I never, ever forgot that. I've told that story on podcasts before. I barely knew you two then. Now I could totally see both of you wonderful fuckers doing something like that. But at the time, you were like new friends that just came in and were amazing at a time where I was not easy to be around because I was going through some shit and I was dead broke, and you and Carsey really fucking helped. So yeah, this is not only one of the many times we've worked together. I just love you guys, and I really appreciate all that shit. So thank you again for that, Art.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, for sure. Glad to help, and shout out to Cruz for for actually introducing us, and we actually. Like it's all started at the very first iFix machine. Rest in peace. I didn't get to.
This started because Cruz message or on one of my videos just commented like cool video, we got a bunch of 14L5s down here at the shop in Brooklyn. And I'm like, you got a bunch of 14L5s?
What?
I'll be right down. And I picked up cousin Scott and we're on our way to the shop. Like, so are we just like gonna go get raped now? Is this just like a couple of dudes like who I pissed off, they're gonna fuck us up? But no, it was all you people at the original iFix. So that was when it was really the computer shop with a couple of machines in it. And that was it. You've all been stuck with me ever since.
No. Oh yeah, like that was around the time when I first got sent down the rabbit hole because I bought my very first PVM and it was fucked up, and then like 2 weeks later Cruz was like, here, like it's working, totally recapped, and I had no idea how much work it took to actually recap and service a whole PVM. Like he made it seem easy, like it was just something you just do, just like that, like so like super easy. But then the problem is once you see RGB, you can't unsee it. Just like high refresh rate. Once you see once you see a high refresh rate, anything, you can't unsee it, and it sends you down this crazy rabbit hole, so to speak. But definitely when I met you, I definitely saw the original vision of what you were trying to do. It's like you basically wanted the RGB castle, like where we could all like be in there and collaborate and basically blow it up. And and unfortunately at that time, the vision was not ready to be 100% realized. Like I think Arcade Brooklyn, the way it is right now, is definitely getting closer to the original vision that you mentioned. It's gonna
that's going to be the spot.
Mm-hmm.
It's kind of funny too, because in very late 2019, early 2020, we almost had it in. We almost had the castle built and ready to, or ready to be built and ready to go. And then, of course, when the world shut down, it was like, ugh. But the way things fell into place, it actually is better. I think doing it at Arcade Brooklyn, having that there, having that crew, Steve and Andy. I mean, I couldn't think of two better people to run something like that. And then all of you guys setting up the streams, everybody chipping in, Cruz and Ben working on the machines and all that. I mean, that's the spot right there. I think that's perfect. I wish someday I can get rich enough to like buy the store next to it or something and add a console section to that too. But we'll try to make that happen someday.
It's actually getting very close. I mean, it's to the point where like every time I go to Steve's place, I'm always basically donating more equipment to the store. But it's not only me, it's everybody that's donating equipment. And now it's to the point where I don't need to bring like a goddamn thing anymore to Arcade Brooklyn. Everything is set up there to my specs. I can just plug in, go. Super easy.
Yeah. Didn't Destiny bring a bunch of monitors and PCs down there or something, something like that?
And Destiny brought I donated a 144 hertz monitor. Destiny one up me with Joey and basically brought I think 3 to 4 165 hertz monitors and donated an i9 an Alienware setup, which we were able to do the 120 FPS Marvel tournament on. Like the first in the world was actually broadcasted live right there at Arcade Brooklyn. So basically everybody's contributing. It's a dream come true. And I'm glad Steve's store, I'm absolutely happy that Steve's store is blowing up.
That was such a hilarious baller move right there. Oh, you fuckers want to call me a fake gamer girl? Okay.
Yeah.
But yeah, that was just kind of funny. I love baller moves like that, where you're just like, yeah, motherfucker, let me show you. So that was kind of that.
I definitely love that. And that's why I respect the hell out of Destiny, because she pretty much blows the stereotype just straight out of the water. It's like, you think I'm a fraud? You think I'm fake? You think I'm just doing this for clout? No, motherfucker. Here, I'll show you what's up.
Dude, I was in tears the other day. Kaiko's coming after me again, the clone company, and I'm blocked, obviously, on Twitter, because why would they want me telling the truth about them? And a bunch of my friends were posting screenshots like, I'm blocked too. But Destiny was like, oh, I'm not blocked. I'm not special enough. Wait a minute, they're following me. Hey, Kaiko, follow my OnlyFans instead. I was like, yeah, fuck you. That shit cracked me up.
That's hilarious. Destiny's so great. I love it,
All
man.
right, so before we lose internet connection again,
Yep.
let's wrap this up because I could just hang out drinking beers and talk to you all night, and
Oh
we're
yeah,
gonna
for
have
sure.
another 10 crashes of the internet. So,
Yeah, for sure.
so obviously for people who are listening to this on my channel, I will have all of your links in the description: Twitch, Twitter, the whole nine. All the next couple events I'll make sure to link to, just so people who watch this within the next few weeks will know where to find you. If you're listening on Art's channel, just find me everywhere at RetroRGB, including and especially Patreon, Floatplane, Ko-fi, all those support services as well. And what's the next event that you're actually going to be running, be a part of, be into?
Oh yeah, so the next event like I'll be doing is battle is no, I'm sorry, not Battle of Strongest 3. It's NYC Battle Royale. It's another MVC2 event. It's coming up in 2 weeks from now. Oh no, actually, I'm sorry. The next event I'm going to be doing is actually the Jazzy Circuit season 3 finals, right? So obviously
Nice.
all the Third Strike I've been doing. I'm actually going to be in free play. I'm going to be at free play in Dallas, Texas. So I'm going to be at the arcade. You know, bringing the CPS3 HDMI out there. You know, full blown 1440p. You know, the homie Mutant Experience will be there. You know, I can't thank Marcus enough. You know, because without his CPS3 HDMI advancements, like, and that's the interesting thing. Like when I was actually talking to Marcus at first at Retro Creates, he did not think that the CPS3 HDMI would be a huge demand. He did not think it at all, and like we actually had to convince him. He was like, "No, like if you actually do this, it's gonna change the game. It's gonna revitalize the scene. Like you're gonna get the highest quality capture of video anywhere. It's gonna solve like a lot of problems." And sure enough, like and sure enough, that's exactly what happened. Now everybody's like banging at the door to try to get CPS3 HDMI, but it's actually sold out everywhere due to the pandemic, right? So
Yeah, I want to make that point. I had a video done over a year ago about that board, a follow-up video to it, and the new features and everything else, and the new boards you could install it into. And that's been on hold because you cannot get those chips anywhere. You might be able to get a batch of like 20 here or there, but like there's going to be a lot more than 20 people care about this thing once they see what else it could do. So we're holding off on that, but yeah, that's pretty sad that
yeah,
hasn't been able to come back yet.
I can't wait for that follow-up video because the initial CPS HDMI video you did was great, but since then, like, there's been so many updates and features that definitely does require like a follow-up video. I mean,
Including Neo Geo.
Oh yeah, Neo Geo 2, yeah, and Toplin boards. Yeah. I don't know anybody. I don't know of anybody like local to us has a Toplin board handy that we can actually install it on.
No, me neither. But yeah, it's pretty cool. And there's even work into thinking about trying to get it in AESs as well.
Oh my
so
goodness,
it's
the rabbit hole.
That,
the rabbit hole pretty much never ends. But
yeah, I gotta ask though, do people still accuse you in your streams of using emulation? Because that was a annoying and hilarious at the same time thing. Where when we first started the high quality streams, people were like, "This is emulation. This is bullshit." And then especially when we switched over to like CPS digital and stuff like that, and DC digital, that's when people were like, "There's no way this is real."
I'm sorry. I'm sorry to inform you, but you basically just got trolled because that's an inside joke on my stream, right? Like the quality of capture.
No,
yeah.
I was at Brooklyn Video Games when people. Well, maybe they were fucking with me, and maybe that was people in the joke. But.
They're fucking with you. They were just feeding the joke. Like basically, like the troll has always been at the capture quality on this channel is so good that people are like, "Yo, what emulator is this?"
That's funny. Well, I guess I was the one that got trolled. I could swear I was part of stuff though that people were legit accusing people of using, because it wasn't just that. It was something like they thought somebody won because of cheating, and by the way, it looks too good. That's not an arcade board anyway, so they got to be running macros or something. So that's funny. Maybe I was just getting trolled, but there was at least one where it actually happened for real. I knew that, but
maybe like they got trolled too. Like I know this because me and Jose started the troll. It's like literally Jose would go into my chat. He'd be like, "Damn, what emulator is this?" And it just kind of just caught on.
That's some funny shit. All right, well, you all got me. It's been years. You got me for the long game on this one. That's embarrassing and hilarious, all at the same time.
Oh god, that's so funny. I didn't think you would actually get trolled too, man.
Oh, that's amazing. Well, that whole RGB adds lag thing, that one's real because I've
That's
heard
real,
that
that's
from
real.
more than one person.
That's
so even if
real.
you all were fucking with me about that one, I've heard that from people that don't even hang out around you. So there you go.
Oh God, yeah, yeah, sick emulator, bro. But yeah, like the events, like I said, the events I'll be doing next, like our Jazzy Circuit Season 3 finals. Make sure you tune into that because it's really like a celebration of Street Fighter 3 Third Strike, and shout outs to Marcus again and guys like you, for really bringing awareness to it, like in your guys' own way. You guys have really helped revitalize the Third Strike scene, and I couldn't be happier for your guys' contributions. And of course, MVC2 as well. The week after that, I'm gonna be doing MVC2 at NYC Next Level. Battle Royale 3. It's gonna be sick. All DC HDMI, everything. One of the dopest things about that event so far. So the last Battle Royale that I did at Next Level, right? Once I got the top 8 territory, I changed the DC digital settings to actually 960p, and obviously why I would do that, right? And then the players, they were like, wait, what's Art doing? Is he breaking something? And then they looked at it, and then they're like, oh, this is way better. Holy shit, maybe we should just let Art just do what he's doing. And I was like, yeah, yeah, guys, like, you think? And they were all like, oh my God, thank you. Like, the whole border is filled. Thank you so much.
That's hysterical.
That's so hysterical. Shout outs to Ponton FSD, like another guy that's that absolutely understands exactly everything that we're talking about, and is also like a great ally on the PC high refresh front. Thank you for stopping by today. I'm sorry we had any tech issues. Also, like anybody that is listening to this on Bob's channel, if you want to follow me, I'm at NYC Furby on Twitter and Twitch, and the YouTube channel is FGC Sabin. My channel is not really like a traditional YouTube channel. It's pretty much a tournament archive dump, right? So like I do like a lot of fighting game tournaments, all across the space, and I upload like high level matches constantly. But it's the only FGC channel on YouTube, to my knowledge, that's been doing straight up 4K 60 FPS capture since like 4 or 5 years ago. So if you love fighting games, definitely check out that channel.
Yeah, absolutely. You've been pioneering a lot of this stuff, so I'll hope I can keep getting you cool shit to keep it going, because I can't wait to see what you're up to next with this.
Yeah, of course. And thanks for agreeing to do the podcast as well, guys. Once again, this is Furby's Corner. This is Furby's Quarter, episode 5. Powered by Beast Coast. Shouts to Beast Coast for sponsoring me as a content creator and player. Like they actually pushed me to do this podcast. I wasn't really into doing like the podcast type of stuff, but yeah, like it worked out great. And thanks for being an amazing guest on the show. I could literally talk to you all day because we haven't talked like at least online or in person, in quite some time. So it's definitely like a cool reunion, and I'm sure we'll meet again soon.
Hell yeah, man! Thanks for having me on, and I'll hopefully see everybody watching soon.
Yep. Yep. I will catch you later. Let me find out. Let me find out who I should raid. Let's see who is on. All right. All right. Like I'll throw the viewers over to Brian F. Since like they're streaming Capcom Pro Tour, the top 8. It's about to happen very shortly. But yeah, thank you guys for watching, and make sure to check this out on YouTube and all of the platforms. Whenever it goes up.